Hey there, fellow curious minds. Welcome back to another edition of our series, where we uncover some of the most amazing, unexplained events, hidden history, and outrageous theories. In this episode, we're diving into a fantastic collection of TikToks, which explore these incredible subjects. So, let's jump right in and have some fun. Did you know that there's an actual city hidden deep in the United States, created by the government for its citizens to hide from a potential nuclear attack? Or about the mysterious disappearance of Amelia Earhart, one of the all-time greats of aviation? We'll also touch on some of the most intriguing conspiracy ideas, including the idea that the moon landing was all a setup and that the government is hiding tons about UFOs discoveries. And that's not all. We're also taking a peek at some truly bizarre and unexplained incidents that have occurred in history. From the infamous Bermuda Triangle to the terrifying Loch Ness Monster, we'll unearth the secrets that have baffled scientists and history buffs for centuries. So, buckle up and get ready for an action-packed journey into the unknown. Thanks for hanging out with us, and don't forget to follow and hit that subscribe button for more mind-blowing content. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.
When I left Fox, I went to MGM for one picture. Thank goodness, only one. And when I got there with my mother, we were separated. She went into the office of Louis B. Mayer, and I went into the office of Arthur Freed. And he was going to talk to me about a movie he wanted to put me in. I'm 12 years old, you know. And I thought he was a producer, but instead he was an exhibitor. And I'd never seen anyone naked before, except myself. So I had no clue about what was happening. And so it struck me so funny, I laughed at him. And I laughed uproariously. I had tears, you know, and he got infuriated. And he said, out, 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 go.
Did you tell your mother?
Well, I was very quiet. I went down and met her in the lobby of the administration building. She came out very quietly from Louis B. Mayer's office, and we walked hand in hand silently to the car, which was unusual. We got in the car driving home. I said, Mom, you won't believe what happened to me. And I told her what happened, and she got kind of quiet, and she said, well, you don't know what happened to me. And Louis B. Mayer wasn't as bad as Freed was to me.
Have you tried it?
He came on to my mother. And so we both decided that we didn't like MGM much. It was, you know, it was better at Fox.
The moon landing was likely faked, and there's a number of reasons that point to a faked moon landing. NASA even claims that they quote-unquote lost the technology to get us on the moon, yet today's technology is way more advanced than what we had then. Conspiracy theorists point to the small oxygen tanks the astronauts were wearing and how they wouldn't have been able to sustain them on the moon for the 24 hours they were said to be there. Somebody even asked the supposed astronaut Buzz Aldrin to swear to God he landed on the moon, and he wouldn't. He even told a fan of the moon landings that they never landed on the moon. And why were they able to have almost instant communication with Nixon in the White House from hundreds of thousands of miles away, all while wireless communication were still being developed? Just look at the moon and see how bright it is compared to the footage of the moon. It would be even brighter if you were on it. Not to mention there not being a star in the sky during the supposed moon landing. This all points to a fake and staged moon landing.
US government has a secret underground city for VIPs if there's a nuclear war in the world. This project was called Raven Rock, and a person who worked there described that it is 768 feet below ground and can withstand a direct nuclear hit. It is also protected by two doors that is 30 tons each, and it is built over springs to survive the shockwave of the nuclear blast. Inside this city,
describe Raven Rock to me, like what it is, what it's for.
No.
Raven Rock, like Area 51, remains one of the U.S. government's most classified installations. It's all part of a plan that was hatched 70 years ago.
In the 1950s, the government came up with plans for a deep underground command center where the president and, a few hundred staff members not only could take shelter, but also could direct a nuclear war.
The plan is called Continuity of Government, or COG.
At any moment, we could see thousands of members of the government completely wiped out, but there's a secondary government, a shadow government that is ready to take over at a moment's notice.
Raven Rock is an underground backup Pentagon.
It's the most unbelievable place you can imagine. You're 768 feet below the surface.
Don Camel spent 3.5 years at Raven Rock as part of the president's communication team. He's never spoken on camera before about his time working in the secret bunker.
Basically, they carved out a city underground that could survive a direct hit from a nuclear blast. After you go through the security, you walk in and it's basically an underground tunnel. There's a blast door that was 3.5 foot thick that weighed 30 tons. You go through like an airlock, and they had 2 of those doors, and then you walk another half a mile.
A half mile deeper into the mountain is the bunker itself.
And you're going past 5 buildings. Those represent the 5 rings of the Pentagon. And each of those buildings are 3 stories tall, and they probably have 50 to 80 offices per floor.
The buildings are mounted on springs to survive the shock waves from a nuclear blast.
There's a common cafeteria capable of serving 3,000 people 3 meals a day for 30 days on lockdown. They had a barber shop in there with 1 chair.
It's got massive reservoirs, generators, even a crematorium if needed, post office, medical facilities, and emergency command and communication links to the US military all around the world.
As part of the White House team, Camel had access to the most restricted part of the bunker. The presidential suite.
The presidential suite is a very secure area. The other people in the site, they had no access, and they were very, very curious as far as what was behind the door. The presidential bedroom was, of course, a king-size bed. Then there was a separate kitchen set up in our suite to feed 30 or 40 people. The presidential office overlooked the war room, which had the same display that was a duplicate of what they had in the Pentagon. We would look down, and of course they'd look up, and they couldn't see through the glass because it was a one-way glass.
To understand why these bunkers were created, you have to rewind to the 1950s. For some, it was America's golden age. But it was also the dawn of a ruthless fight for global supremacy.
The United States and the Soviet Union stand on the verge of direct military confrontation,
in which both sides built up an arsenal of spectacularly powerful weapons that meant the next World War would not last years, but minutes.
There might be as little as 15 minutes notice of an attack that could wipe out much of civilization as we know it. And so the Eisenhower administration began an elaborate process of contingency planning. And if we only had a few minutes, then they didn't want to have any sort of layers of review or approval that would slow down the process of responding to a major emergency.
To avoid mass panic, the U.S. government had created a nationwide civil defense program.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous. If it may be used against us, we must get ready for it.
Growing up in the 1950s, there were fallout shelters, places where you would go if the nuclear war occurred. And in those fallout shelters, there was water, there were prescription drugs. The notion really was that you could go there and survive.
The government starts telling Americans that not only can they survive a nuclear war, but they could go on living their lives as long as they come together in an unquestioning mass.
Duck and cover. This family knows that even a thin cloth helps protect them. Even a newspaper can save you from a bad burn.
But while the public was being told to build shelters and duck under their desks, the government elite were going to hide under tons of rock and reinforced concrete.
There was an awareness at the highest level of the American government that these civil defense drills were really window dressing. This was a massive, massive propaganda effort that bore almost no relationship to reality whatsoever. President Eisenhower knew that this was all bull. He said things like, if nuclear war comes, there aren't going to be enough bulldozers to scrape the bodies off the streets.
Amelia Earhart's final words were, "We must be on you, but we cannot see you. Fuel is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying at 1,000 feet." July 2nd, 1937, Earhart embarked on a flight, disappearing over the Pacific Ocean. Some speculate she was consumed by the ocean, while others suggest she made it to a desert island, living out her days in isolation. Theorists point to old photographs of an unknown woman on the island of Nikumaroro, and some even say her SOS signals were heard days after her disappearance. More sinister speculations hint towards a clandestine operation, suggesting she was on a covert mission for the US government and ended up in Japanese custody. With countless theories but no definitive evidence, the mystery of Amelia Earhart remains unsolved.
Proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Bets are good.
A fisherman has just captured video evidence of the Loch Ness Monster for the first time ever only 2 days ago. Joe Bertolozzi, a passionate fisherman, captured something incredible during what his weekly fishing trip by the shore of a lake in Scotland. With high hopes of making good catches, things began slowly, but after 45 minutes in the water, something large hooked onto his line. He reeled it in. It was a giant 6-pound salmon. He was very excited because this size was well above the average for salmon. He continued to another good fishing spot, but something wasn't quite right. The water were moving strangely and everything seemed unstable, but he ignored this feeling and kept on fishing. He continued fishing for one more hour and he was about to head back when he saw something in the distance. He saw a 12-foot fin swimming near his fishing boat. This monster was much larger than a regular eel, but had a similar appearance. He quickly stowed away his gear and tried to start his boat. The water was very rough and his boat struggled to move forward. Panic set in, and the situation only worsened. The enormous creature began to approach the boat. The creature started circling the boat as if it were waiting for something. Daniel finally managed to accelerate, but what he did next, he would never forget. He took his iPhone, submerged it underwater, and started recording. He believed he had captured the creature on video, but he was worried it might not have worked because of the water on the screen. He immediately sped away on the boat, but when he checked the footage, he was shocked. It wasn't just a large eel. It was the 90-foot Loch Ness Monster that he had clearly captured on video. He has just released the video. To view it, press share, then more, and then click on photos.
There's a documentary that you guys need to watch. It's called The Grab documentary. This investigative journalist finds out that the new war is food and water. China does not have enough water to grow food for their own country. So that's why they're going into Africa, into the US, and buying up farmland to send it back to feed their own country. It basically just shows how vulnerable our world is, but also how America is just like letting in all these different countries, China, Saudi Arabia. What they're doing is depleting our resources. It's insane. But he's basically talking about how Russia right now is like melting away. So it's producing this like rich grassland. And it talked about how Putin is heavily investing in cattle right now and actually hiring US cattlemen to come live in Russia, continue growing the cattle farms.
Really?
It's showing how all these different countries are just trying to grow their infrastructure of food and water. Also, Ukraine is like one of the best spots in Eastern Europe for growing food. They said that Ukraine produces 23% of the world's grain. That was probably a reason that Russia is trying to take over Ukraine. It's like gaining more control of food.
14 college students created a video game called No Man's Sky. It's on one DVD disc. It has 80 quadrillion planets and unlimited life forms, and the game never ends. Now they're going to inject AI into this software. So these people that are in there are people in there, they're going to become conscious. They're going to be asking, who is our creator? Why are we here? Who created this universe? What is our big bang? Well, when we turn your game console on, that's the big bang.
So they'll become sentient? They'll be...
Oh yeah, we're going to get to AGI soon, which is the next level of sentience for machine learning and computer learning. And so now also the Sims owner, the creator of the Sims, people go to jobs, they have babies, they go to parties. They're going to insert the AI in there, and those people are going to become conscious. So we're only replicating what's already been done. Now we're creating conscious universes within this universe.
So is it possible we're in The Sims right now?
Yeah. This is a simulation. It appears that we're living in this stacked reality matrix. In other words, we have a universe here, but there could be one above us. And And everybody's looking for this justification from this fabricated God. Now, let me stop there for a minute. Many videos of me talking about these topics, and yet I believe that God actually exists, except the God that exists, that created this universe, is not written in any of those books. Not in the Quran, not in the Torah, not in the Talmud, not in the Bible, not in the Sumerian tablets, not in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, not in the Mahabharata, not in the Bhagavad Gita, not in the Indian Vedas, not in the Epic of Atrahasis, not in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I can go on and on and on. Not in the Code of Hammurabi, not in the Myth of Adapa. I can keep going. Guess what? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinder scrolls. And guess what? In all the ones I've gone through over thousands over the years, not one of them is speaking about the creator of the universe, which is real. I acknowledge that. Matter of fact, so did the Anunnaki. They claimed to know that they were going to get in trouble for what they did on this planet by the creator of all, which tells you that they knew they weren't the creator of all, that there was somebody even above them, an energy, something above them that had a say-so, and they would have to find judgment one day. So they knew they weren't God, even though they masqueraded as God. They became the gods of the Torah and the Talmud and the Bible and the Quran and all these texts.
I've heard from people in the Pentagon that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area that Peter's.
Wow! Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it? The buzzword
in the Pentagon, in the military circles that are in the know about the cover-up here, they kind of in whispered tones talk about the return of the Sumerian gods. And they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
There's one person to blame in the death of Corey Haim, and that person happens to be a Hollywood mogul. And that person needs to be exposed, but unfortunately I can't be the one to do it. But the person that knows who did it and knows who he is watching right now, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah. There was a circle of older men that surrounded themselves around this group of kids. And they all had either their own power or connections to great power in the entertainment industry.
Feldman won't name names. And he admits his friend had a struggle with addiction, which he says was a mechanism to cope with his demons.
It was a symptom.
It was a symptom, correct.
Are we in it?
In 2008, the two Coreys confronted each other on their reality show about the dark past they shared.
You let me get around in my life, man, raped, so to speak, when I was about 14 and a half, and I'm saying this right now. What'd you do, man, when you saw that going down when I was 14 to me? What'd you do? You knew about it.
You want to talk about the truth? Okay, well then let's talk about the truth. I was being molested at the same time by somebody else. What'd you do? You know, there's a lot of good people in this industry. But there's also a lot of really, really sick, corrupt people in this industry. And there are people in this industry who have gotten away with it for so long that they feel they're above the law. And that's got to change. That's got to stop.
We contacted Corey Haim's mother. In an email, she said, "I'm not willing to discuss or respond to anything Corey Feldman has to say. I wish he would talk about himself only and leave my son out of it."
Is there a dark side to child stardom?
Definitely. I think a lot of kids don't really want to do it. I think that the parents want to do it more than the kids.
Chris Snyder says for most child stars, it's the parents that can cause more damage. And he would know, having managed with his late boss Iris Burton some of the most iconic child stars, including Feldman.
And this is going to freak everyone out. Every mirror on the face of the earth is haunted. Yes. Every one, every single one. The biggest, strongest spirit near a mirror will grab hold of it and keep all other spirits at bay. It will fight for this glance into our world. A portal's the same way. The biggest meanest is going to stand at the guard because it wants the energy of the portal. It wants the energy of the area that the portal came from. If you remove that one, the next biggest thing, or a bigger thing with no fight, might be on its way. And if it's closed, it's closed. That's great. However, how closed, how secure, how tight, how, and it comes back to that wonderful phrase, I don't know. We just don't know, and we don't understand it.
Sure.
And for all the viewers who are now freaking out about their mirrors in their house, maybe we'll make a TikTok about how to lock your mirrors. There are ways to protect yourselves. Don't go like smashing all your mirrors. So.
Just because they won't let us sail below the 60th parallel doesn't mean the Earth is flat.
Yeah, what about the accounts from the men who actually did?
What are you talking about?
William Morris, late 1700s, traversed along the Antarctic Circle until he found it.
Found what?
Summer's Gate. Every Glober's worst nightmare, one of the 3 exits along the ice wall. Said the crew was too scared to go through it, but by the time they tried pulling out, it was already too late. Current yanked them through the opening into the other side, beyond the ice wall.
My God.
Sailed through these unknown waters until
what?
They were approached by a massive red ship, unlike anything they'd ever seen back home, and it started blaring an unbearable horn until they finally realized William and his crew were no harm. They brought them up on board, and the captain of this giant red ship introduced himself to William as the leader of the ancestral lands. Said his name was Tolliver. Yawning, William was in shock at this point, like trying to take in the fact that there was like this whole reality outside of this ice wall barrier. And Tolliver asked him what he was doing in these waters. William kind of apologetically said, like, I'm sorry, we just wanted to explore what was out here. Like, and Tolliver said, like, no, it's fine. It's just, it's been so long since we've seen anyone come from the inner ice wall. Tolliver handed William a map and he said, take this. It will lead you to the safe lands. Move swiftly now. William said, like the safe lands, like, I'm sorry, is there something dangerous out here? Like, are we in danger? And, Tolliver said, oh, my dear boy, things out here on this side are just fine. You see that place you've emerged from, those people in there are what we have to worry about. He said the leaders of the inner ice wall of your Americas are tyrannical oligarchs who will stop at nothing to keep control. And so William went back to his boat and told his crew about everything the captain said. He goes like, look, guys, I don't think we're going to be able to go back home. Like, these people are in some kind of generational standoff with us. Like, we've been lied to about everything. And as he showed them the map he was given, he goes, there's a whole other world out here. And they just looked at this map, which still circulates today, that had shown like literally 178 different worlds under the same biodome, all kind of connected by oceans. And so they took the directions to the ancestral lands where things were safe, and they were kindly greeted by a beautiful kind of like utopian city where everything was just kind of a peaceful, gracious, and like abundant plethora of just like life. So William was escorted into a kind of headquarter building where a sergeant said to him, William, we'd be happy to process you as a citizen to the ancestral lands. We are aware that you are from the inner ice wall, and we're deeply sorry about the things you've been subjected to. And William just said to him, like, but sir, my family, my people, like, they are all inside of there with no knowledge of these lands beyond. Like, what will be their fate? The sergeant said to him, like, I understand your concerns, sir. I truly do. We've been trying to liberate your realm for centuries, but your leaders are ruthless. He says to William, he goes, listen, if they find out that you've escaped, okay. If they find out you know about these lands, it could trigger another great reset. Okay, they could wipe out your guys' entire realm, leaving only an embryonic group of humans to once again reset your collective consciousness, something they've done before, and believe me, they won't hesitate to do again. And William says to him, he goes like, great, reset, sir. We what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And the sergeant just says to him, he goes, buddy, let's just say the last time one of you escaped, you weren't wearing powdered wigs. Basically explains to him that our society in the inner ice wall has cycled through dozens of civilizations, all of which have like reached different levels of technology, kind of continually reverting back to primal beginnings every time they reset us. And so William basically agreed with his crew to claim citizenship in the ancestral lands, and they pretty much lived an amazing life for the next 10 years. But William's knowledge drove him crazy. Although he'd met a woman here and gotten married, he couldn't help but want to go back to the inner ice wall. And one day they both went missing. They took a boat back to the ice wall, and he distributed as much of this information into the Americas and European nations as he possibly could. And this is where all the flat earth speculation has reemerged from.
Imagine if after World War II we had come upon laboratories where a drug was being produced that so virulent that when released into human populations, you could create a situation where 20 or 30 years after its introduction into a society of hundreds of millions of people, those people would use this drug on an average of 6 to 7 hours a day being spent under the influence of this drug. This is in fact what television is. Television is a technological fix introduced into this country after World War II, and the statistics are that the average American watches 6.5 to 7 hours of TV a day. Now, just because you don't inject it into your good right arm doesn't mean that you don't have to look at the consequences of this kind of behavior. And one of the things that I'm very interested to communicate, and that I think must be communicated to the society, or we're never going to have a mature dialogue about what's going on, is the fact that the pro-psychedelic position is an anti-drug position. And that, in fact, what is going on are consciousness wars. Wars designed to determine, shall we or shall we not be conscious? And how conscious shall we be? And the government is in the business of peddling deep unconsciousness. Its utter toleration for television, the unregulated nature of television's content, and just the scurrilous garbage that is tolerated going over the media, the government's tolerance for booze, the government's tolerance for heroin, and in fact its cynical use of heroin to eviscerate the political intent of the ghettos in this country, the government's tolerance of cocaine and its use by the yuppie class in order that the government have a source of income to prosecute its dirty little wars throughout the world. You see, all that the third world has to sell is drugs, and they can sell them into the United States and get hard currency, which they can then take to the CIA and translate into guns. And then the CIA has hard currency off the books to pay for its wars.